All right. Well, welcome to Christian Dawa. We're doing a live stream for the first time in a while, so let's just hop right into it. Today, what we're going to be talking about is a question that has come up a lot, actually, as far as I can tell, in dialogues between Christians and people of other faiths. Now, this comes up especially with between Christians and people from Eastern worldviews like Buddhism or Hinduism or Sikhism, as well as secular people, just regular secular people in the West, atheists, agnostic, those kind of people. And this issue is that a lot of people look at Christianity and they see that Christians do evangelism, which is that Christians try to share the gospel. They try to talk to other people about their worldview and actually try to convince them to join their worldview, to become Christians. And a lot of people look at that and they say, man, that's evil. That's exploitative. That's not okay. Why would you do that? Why would you not just let people do their own thing? Why can't you just let people live their own truths? Why can't we just, let people be? And so today, what we're going to be doing is it's something that actually is a big issue, especially in Western countries, in countries with a wide variety of diversity of religious faiths. This question comes up a lot, and it actually is something that's really important to understand. And I think it's a sticking point between Christians and Sikhs, but between Christians and other people groups as well, because other religious groups as well, because I think a lot of people get turned off by Christianity, or they impute certain motives onto Christians who are doing evangelism or trying to reach their religion for Christ. They're trying to convince them to become Christians. A lot of people look at that and feel attacked, or they feel disrespected. And I understand that. I understand why people might feel that way. But I wanted to give a Christian perspective in response to that perspective. I wanted to, as a Christian, talk about why we do evangelism and why that might not be what exactly other people think it is. That our motives for doing that might not be what you think they are. And so I think one of the ways that we can do this is we're going to be talking about this video here by a very large YouTube channel called The Basics of Sikhi, which is a YouTube channel made by Sikhs about Sikhism. And so it's something that's really useful. I found this channel very helpful. And so they made a video a few years ago about, in response basically to a pamphlet, as you're going to see, that Christians in the UK made about evangelizing to Sikhs. And so let's just go through this video, and I'm going to respond to it as we go along. Let's get started.
Calling all Christians to Sikhi. That sounds quite rude, right? But this is something we would never do as Sikhs. But recently, a post has been circulating calling all Sikhs to Christ, intending to target and convert the Sikh population in the UK. We find it very disrespectful.
Okay, so the first question there, he leads off the video by saying, calling all Christians to accept Sikhi. He says, that sounds really disrespectful. That sounds rude, doesn't it? And I can say as a Christian, no, it doesn't. That doesn't sound rude at all. If a Sikh came to me and said, hey, you're a Christian, I'm calling you to accept Sikhi and to begin following the teachings of Guru Nanak, I would say, oh, thanks for inviting me to do that. Let's talk about it. But I would not feel attacked, or I would not feel disrespected by someone doing that. In fact, I would feel appreciative. I would say I would be grateful that they are taking time out of their busy schedule to actually care enough about me and about my soul and my spiritual well-being to try to get me to help me to see the truth as they see it, and to do the thing that helped them in a spirit that go along with the spiritual path that has helped them. And so I would be grateful. I would not feel defensive or rude, or feel that was rude at all. So it's a little bit interesting, a little bit odd, I would say, at least from a Christian perspective, to hear a Sikh say, wow, I feel really disrespected just off the bat from not even hearing why they're doing this or how they're going about this evangelism. Just the idea of calling Sikhs to come believe in Jesus, that alone is immediately causing him to feel disrespected. I gotta say, I don't feel the same way. As a Christian, I would not feel disrespected if a Sikh did that to me. But yeah, let's keep going and see why he says this.
Target and convert the Sikh population in the UK. We find it very disrespectful to scheme and target a community with an agenda to convert them. It completely undermines our mutual respect among faiths in this multi-faith country. Sikhs are totally against forceful or targeted conversion.
Okay. So a couple things about this. The first point he makes is that, okay, this, if we are, trying to convert other people or sharing the gospel with other people, that is disrespectful and it is counterproductive in our multi-faith society. And that's an interesting take. The problem here, there's two problems. The first one, as we're going to talk about this more as the video goes on, but the first problem is, what if a core tenet of Christianity is evangelism? What if what it means to be a Christian and one of the essential elements of Christianity is sharing the gospel with other people and calling other people to join you as you follow Christ? If that's the case, if that is a central tenet of Christianity, if you can't be a Christian without doing that, then what is he asking for then? Because he's saying this disturbs the ecosystem of different faiths that we have built in somewhere like the UK. That in the UK we have a multi-faith society. We've got Muslims and Sikhs and Christians and Buddhists and Hindus, and we're all living peaceably together. And you have your religion, I have my religion, and we're not going to try to convert each other. That only works if none of those religions have as their core tenet or their core belief the requirement to share their faith or to reach out and try to convince people to join you. So the problem right off the bat is he's making Christians make a choice. He's saying, you guys aren't supposed to, you're not allowed to do evangelism, you're not allowed to share the gospel because that makes me feel disrespected. But by him doing that, he's forcing his opinion onto Christians. He's saying, I don't think your religious belief that evangelism is important and a good thing, I think that's wrong. And so I'm going to enforce my religious values onto you. So ironically, he's doing the very thing that he is doing the very thing that he is critiquing Christians for doing, right? He's saying, you guys are enforcing your beliefs onto us. We don't like that. Well, by him doing the opposite, he's enforcing the Sikh belief of no evangelism onto Christianity. So that's the first issue. The second issue, let me back up here. Let's watch that part again here.
Respect among Christians in the UK. We find it very disrespectful to scheme and target a community with an agenda to convert them.
Okay, so he uses the words to scheme and target a community. And that's pretty loaded language there, right? He's saying to scheme and to target a community. Well, that's kind of like saying, I feel offended because there was an ad on YouTube that I got that was targeted towards men who are under 40 years old. That ad was targeted towards me. They're scheming. Well, maybe they're scheming, or maybe they just are trying to give me an ad that I will find interesting and to say it in a way that will be appealing to me. And that's what's happening here with these Christians. They're not saying, "Ooh, we're going to target these Sikhs and we're going to destroy their lives." They're thinking, "Hey, we want to share a true thing that we believe that's important to us to this group of people, to Sikhs. How can we do that in a way that will be helpful to them and that will connect with them and that they're not just going to completely misunderstand?" So, you can call it scheming and you can call it targeting, but that's not giving anyone the benefit of the doubt there. That's taking the worst possible motives and like imputing that onto the Christians there. That's not their intention. That's not the idea. The idea is just, how can we help people to understand our faith as we in a way that, how can we explain our faith in a way that these people will understand it? We got a couple comments here. Thanks for them. Yeah, the final command from Jesus is the Great Commission. That's true. We're going to get to that a little bit later on here about why evangelism is so important to Christians and what it really means to do that. And the other thing is so moving on, let's keep going here. Oh, here we got a new comment. Austin Milne. Oh, hi, Austin. Good to see you. Hey, brother, great work you're doing. I've recently heard Muslims, Mormons, and Sikhs making the criticism that Christians get a lot of their ontology and concept of the Trinity from Neoplatonism. Ooh, what would be your response? Thanks for that question. Wow, that's a that's a good question. Let me think here. I would say, I don't want to go too deeply into this. It's a little bit not on topic at the moment, but it's a good question. I think, fundamentally speaking, the idea of the Trinity, of there being three persons in the Godhood, is not something. Well, if you describe the Trinity as if you take the Trinity as it is described by um, later Christian traditions, later Christian creeds, like, for example, the Nicene Creed, then there is going to be a certain level of influence in some of those creeds from Greek thinking, because these were Greek speaking Christians in a Greco Roman world. And so they were going to borrow some of the philosophical ideas and how they explained the Trinity, how they fleshed out some of the details, right? For example, talking about homoousios, which is one substance, versus homoiousios of similar substance. So these are Greek words that they're using to describe the Trinity. But that doesn't mean that the actual idea of the Trinity is a Greek idea. That I think that when you go to the biblical text and you see what the Bible says about there being one God, the Old Testament makes that very clear. There's only one God. But then it also goes into, in the New Testament, we see that Jesus is clearly divine, and we clearly see the Holy Spirit as divine, and we also see the Father God as divine. That leads us logically to have to say, well, there's going to be one God who is comprised of three divine persons. And so that concept, as it was stated in the Bible, is stated through the Hebrew culture, the ancient Israelite culture, and then later through the Aramaic and Greek speaking culture of Palestine at the time of Jesus. But it's much later on in the councils and the creeds that developed, where when they had to really get into the nitty gritty details of what do we mean by Trinity, and what is the relationship between the different persons of the Trinity, that's where they started having to implement some Greek ideas, and which makes it, I can see why someone might look at that and say, oh man, that's just Greek Neoplatonism. I really don't think that's the case. I think that just happens to be the cultural milieu that the later Christians found themselves in. But for example, today, we can make a perfectly good case for the Trinity just based on the biblical text, without relying on a lot of these, a lot of the heavily, Greco-Roman ideas and concepts that were used by the later councils. And how would I define dualism from Scripture? Oh man, this is a good question. Well, Austin, it's interesting. I was actually tempted to make. I'm in the process of making a video right now about non-dualism versus dualism, specifically in response to Eastern faiths like Buddhism and Hinduism and Sikhism. And so I'm going to need to do a bit more research on that. I'm working on. So I'll give you a little bit of insight. I don't think that you can make an ontological argument, or an argument based on ontology of whether or not dualism is true or false, because dualism is based on an axiom, fundamental truth, that there is oneness in everything. Oh, so non-dualism. Sorry, my bad. Non-dualism is based on the idea that that everything is one, that there is no difference between you and me and the universe. Everything is one. That's an axiom that can't be proven. That is just simply assumed, just like the axiom that I exist is something that can't really be proven. It's just something that I assume. So I don't think you can prove that dualism or non-dualism is true. I think what you can do is make an argument that non-dualism is not justified to believe in, because there might be things that are true, but I'm not justified in believing. Like, for example, it might be true that we live in a computer simulation, but I can make a good philosophical argument as to why it's not justified for me to believe that I'm in a computer simulation. And so I think I'm going to be making a video on that shortly, about even if non-dualism is true, why I, as a Christian, or why as a non-dualist myself, I'm not justified in believing that. And so hopefully that, I guess, I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, I'm curious to know if you've got any thoughts on that. Please let me know. But yeah, those are some really good questions. Thanks for asking. I really appreciate it. Okay, so let's get back to this question about evangelism and Sikhism, and what our fellow from Basics of Sikhi has to say here. Let's back up a touch.
Community with an agenda to convert them. It completely undermines our mutual respect among faiths in this multi-faith country. Sikhs are totally against forceful or targeted conversion, and have even defended other faiths from this throughout our history. Calling Sikhs to Christ?
Okay. So this is a problem here. I'm going to back up the video here. Right here, we can see this picture that he's got here is a painting of one of the executions of one of the gurus at the time of the Sikhs by what would have been the Mughal Empire, which was the ruling Muslim empire in India at the time of the gurus. And this is a real problem. He conflates two things. He's saying Sikhs are against forceful conversion, and then he shows us a picture of a Sikh guru having his head chopped off, as if that's in any way comparable to Christians in the UK trying to share the gospel or evangelize to the Sikhs around them. Those are completely different ideas, completely different planes of existence. Like, come on, let's be real here. We can't compare those two things. Christians are not going around threatening to kill Sikhs if they don't convert to Christianity. That's not even close to what's happening. They just want to share their perspective on what is true and do that in a way that Sikhs will hopefully find interesting and helpful. And so this is super disingenuous by the Sikh fellow. He's comparing evil atrocities done by Muslims and Hindus to Sikhs by killing them for their faith to Christians in the modern day just sharing their faith with Sikhs. And if we're going to have a productive dialogue about this topic, and if we're going to have productive interfaith dialogue, this kind of behavior, this kind of just overly over the top rhetoric is unhelpful, and it really undermines his position, because he's coming at this trying to say we're us Sikhs, we're here just trying to promote peace, we're just trying to promote interfaith dialogue, getting along. But then he shows something like this and he compares Christians evangelizing in the UK to Muslims beheading Sikh gurus, and that's just not fair. And so that's a big problem here.
Have even defended other faiths from this throughout our history. Calling Sikhs to Christ? No thank you. Yes, we respect Jesus and prophets of other faiths, but none of them are equal to Siddhi Guru Nanak Dev Ji, who is the form of the one, Vaheguru Ji. Even though this event...
Okay, so next up he says, well, here's the thing. We don't believe in conversion because we respect all prophets, but we believe that the ultimate truth is found in the form of Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji, who is the form of Vaheguru, the God or the oneness. And this is really interesting because actually this Sikh fellow here, he is speaking against... he's speaking in a way that is actually contradictory to the way many Sikhs that I personally have interacted with and have seen both online and in person. That he's saying the ultimate truth can be found in Sikhism, and that other religions might have some elements of truth, but Sikhism is the one truth. That is actually not a very popular position in Sikhism, as far as I understand it. And I'm not an expert in Sikhism, but I have spent a few years studying it. I do engage with Sikhs in dialogue, and I have not heard this position hardly ever, that Sikhism is like the ultimate truth above all other religions. What is more common to hear, much more common, is that Sikhism is equally true to other religions. That most Sikhs would say something like, every religion is true, they're just different perspectives, or every religion is a path to God, and we're one path to God. Christianity is another path to God. Hinduism is another path to God. But they wouldn't say that Sikhism is the best or the most truthful path to God. And so that's what's interesting, is I would say he's going to get pushback from a lot of Sikhs who would see this and say that Sri Guru Nanak Ji is the ultimate source of truth. But what's interesting is, let's just assume that what he's saying is true from Sikhs, and let's assume that all Sikhs agree with him, that he's speaking correctly for Sikhi. This creates a problem. That in this very video, he is doing evangelism. He just told me through this video that the ultimate source of truth comes through Sikhism, to the Sikh gurus. Well, that's what a Christian is doing. That's what these people at this conference were doing, that he's critiquing for their evangelism, who are evangelizing to Sikhs. He's doing the same thing in this video. He's saying, I know you think your religion is true, but actually, no, the ultimate truth is found in my religion. And as a Christian, I have no problem with that. I think that's great. Please evangelize to me. When Muslims come to me and try and convert me, I say, thank you, please do more. When Sikhs, like he is doing it, I say, thanks, let's do more. I like having this dialogue. But what he's doing is hypocritical, because on the one hand, he's critiquing Christians for evangelizing, but then in the very next breath, he is giving out the idea, or he's trying to convince people that Sikhism is the ultimate truth. So that's a problem, I would say.
The church has Jesus and prophets of other faiths, but none of them are equal to Siddhi Guru Nanak Dev Ji, who is the form of the one, Vaheguru Ji. Even though this event at the church has been cancelled, we have now seen the malicious intentions behind the organizers and the speakers who have made a global effort to target Sikhs. The Global Sikh Consultation by the Lawson Movement has listed their agenda on their website with articles like Leading Sikhs to the Ultimate Guru. Now, brothers, listen. We already have the ultimate guru. And if you were to ask your guru, Jesus, in his own words.
Okay, sorry, I went too far there. So let's talk about this. So he says, but let's look at these guys. The Lausanne Conference is, for those of you who don't know, it's one of probably the biggest missions conference in the world. And they meet, they just met last year in South Korea. And they meet, and the point of this conference is to gather together Christians from all around the world to try to talk about how we can evangelize, how we can share the good news and the salvation and the peace and the love that we find in Jesus to people of other faiths around the world, to Hindus, Buddhists, Muslims, Sikhs, everyone. And so, atheists too, of course. And so he says, look, we have discovered their malicious intent because they are trying to lead Sikhs to the true guru, which is Jesus. Now, firstly, I don't see where he's coming, what he sees as malicious here. He hasn't shown that these Christians who are doing this are trying to harm Sikhs in any way. In order for it to be malicious, he has to show that the Christians who are doing this believe what they're doing to be harmful. But I don't think that you can show that. And I got to say, as a Christian, I can say, these Christians don't think that. The people who are spending their time trying to share the gospel with people of other religions are not doing it because they're like, oh man, if I share my faith with this person of another faith, that's going to ruin their lives. It's going to be so funny. It's going to destroy their lives. It's going to be horrible. No, the reason they're evangelizing is because they think it's going to help them. So even if you think they're wrong, even if you think that Sikhism is the ultimate truth and that Christianity is false, even if you think that, you can't say that these people are being malicious or that they're being ill-intentioned. You at the very most can say that they're wrong and their actions are not going to lead to the effect that they hope it will. But that's totally different than being malicious. So he hasn't shown that they're being malicious. And ironically,
and the speakers,
here, let's back this up here and say this. See this
prophets of other faiths, but none of them are equal to Siddhi Guru Nanak Dev Ji, who is the form of the one Vaheguru Ji. Even though this event at the church has been cancelled, we have now seen the malicious intentions behind the organizers and the speakers who have made a global effort to target Sikhs. The Global Sikh Consultation by the Lawson Movement has listed their agenda on their website with articles like Leading Sikhs to the Ultimate Guru.
Leading Sikhs to the Ultimate Guru. So here's what's funny. Again, sorry to point this out, but this fellow here, my friend, Sikh friend here, he's being really hypocritical because what did he just say? What did he just say 1 minute ago? He said that the ultimate truth or the true guru is Guru Nanak Dev Ji, that the Guru Nanak of the Sikhs is the form of Vaheguru. And so he himself is telling people that no, we have the true guru. So Christians are saying we have the true guru. And then our Sikh friend here is saying, no, Sikhs are the ones who have the true guru. Okay, fine. We have a disagreement there. And that's a good place to have a talk, have a dialogue. Say, well, we both believe that we have the true guru. What does that mean? Let's talk about it. And that's what Christians are trying to do. What he's doing is he's saying, no. I get to say that my guru is the true guru, but you Christians don't get to say that. You can't say that. Well, why? Well, how's that fair? You got it. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. If you can say that your guru is the ultimate guru, then why can't Christians do that? And more importantly, if you're able to say that without malicious intent behind your words, right? I'm assuming you aren't trying to harm people by your words. Then why do you assume that Christians are trying to harm people? Oh, thank you. We just got another comment here. Jesus is not a guru. Most evangelicals would consider that heretical. Thank you. That's a good point. This is a very complicated and deep topic, but the word, okay, let's say this. So guru, the word guru in Sikhi has multiple levels of meaning. The highest level of meaning not the highest level, the surface level meaning is teacher. So we say, yeah, gurus are teachers. And so in that sense, Jesus is a guru for one, because he was a teacher. So that's not wrong to say that. But he's also more than teacher. But also, interestingly, the word guru also means more than teacher. In Sikhi, from what I understand, the guru is actually the embodiment of the eternal wisdom. It's the eternal wisdom that's existed for all time, from before time until the present. That is the guru. The guru is the eternal wisdom of the divine. And so the guru then has manifested himself or itself in various people throughout time. So some Sikhs would say, for example, that Jesus was one of those manifestations of the guru, that Jesus was a human manifestation of the eternal wisdom. And so as a Christian, I would not disagree with that. I think Jesus is a manifestation of the eternal wisdom and of God. He's also God himself. But here's the thing, that so another example is in the Guru Granth Sahib, in the Sikh holy scriptures, there are when the different parts of the Guru Granth Sahib were written by different people, by different gurus. And so what's interesting is at the beginning of one of those sections where a new guru starts to write, there's a title that says, this is the first guru, the second guru, the third guru, etc. But the word they use is not guru. The word they use is mahela, which is like temple, or like building. That's where you get the word, or palace, maybe another word. The Taj Mahal. Taj Mahal in India is the crown of the palace, and so mahela. So what that means is that in the Guru Granth Sahib, the gurus who are writing are viewing themselves as palaces, that they're just like the house for the divine wisdom to reside inside. And so another way you can see this is the fact that after the 10th Guru, Guru Gobind Singh, then the Guru became the Guru Granth Sahib. The book became the Guru. So there were 10 human gurus, and now there is the eternal Guru, who is the book. So how can you have the Guru be a human as well as a book? Well, because the Guru itself is not just the person, it's not just a human, it's not just a teacher, it's the divine wisdom, it's divinity itself, that it can be that can fill a human, or it can be in a book. And so that's why today Sikhs will honor and revere their holy book, the Guru Granth Sahib, not just as scripture, but as the divine wisdom. And so when Christians who are talking to Sikhs refer to Jesus as the ultimate guru, they're talking about this on this deeper level of Jesus is the embodiment, Jesus is the incarnation of the divine wisdom, of divinity himself. And so it's just a different way of talking about what a guru is. And that's why they use this terminology of Jesus, the ultimate guru. It is language that can be misleading to people, but that the point of that language is not to talk to non-Sikhs. The point of that language is to reach people who are Sikh, who understand some of these layered meanings of guru. And so that type of outreach will be geared towards them. So I would say that in response to Happy Feet, thank you for that comment. Jesus is the Son of God. That is one way of looking at it. But I think we can all agree that is when we're describing the divine nature of Jesus, when we're talking about the incarnation, there are going to be multiple ways of analyzing that and describing that. And so I see no reason why, provided that we have clarity on what we mean by guru, that the idea here that Jesus is the ultimate guru, I don't see why that needs to be something that is heretical. I think that's perfectly justified in a legitimate way of talking about Jesus. But that's just my perspective. So let's keep moving on here. So what else do we have to say?
Now, brothers, listen. We already have the ultimate guru. And if you were to ask your guru, Jesus, in his own words, he said, "It is my inner desire that my followers one day adopt the path shown by the great guru, Guru Nanak Dev Ji." Instead of praying for Sikhs to...
Okay. Okay. This is really funny. Now, if you're a Christian who's watching this right now, you might be wondering and say, that's interesting. I've read the Bible a bunch of times. I don't remember the verse where Jesus says, "It is my inner desire that my followers one day adopt the path shown by the great Guru Nanak Dev Ji." And that's because this quote he's taking doesn't come from the Bible. This comes from a mystic, as you can see here, named Sant Baba Harnam Singh Ji, who lived in the end of the 1800s and the beginning of the 1900s. And this is a description of a vision that he had. Well, he claims it's real, but whatever, a experience he had, let's say, where he met Muhammad and Jesus, and they say things to him. And so in this vision that he has, or in this experience he has, Jesus says, hey, it's my desire that all the Christians follow Guru Nanak Dev Ji, which is really interesting. Once again, that goes against what most Sikhs I know believe. Most Sikhs I know are not in favor of Christians converting to Sikhism. In fact, one of the biggest examples they give is they'll say one of Guru Nanak's, who is the first guru, the originator of Sikhism, they'll say that one of Guru Nanak's closest companions was a Muslim, and that Guru Nanak encouraged this companion to continue to be a Muslim and to stay a Muslim and to be a good Muslim, and that this companion of Guru Nanak's died a Muslim. And so a lot of Sikhs I know, when asked about, hey, do Sikhs want Christians or Muslims to convert to Sikhism? Most Sikhs I know will say, no, we don't want you to convert to Sikhism. We want you to be a good Christian or to be a good Muslim. And that is the desire of Guru Nanak Dev Ji. And so, interestingly enough, this quotation allegedly from Jesus would actually cut against that commonly held belief by Sikhs. So he says, so anyway, Basics of Sikhi here, he says, Jesus himself says that the ultimate guru is Guru Nanak Dev Ji. And this, of course, is just blatantly false. Jesus never said this. There's no evidence that Jesus said anything of the sort. Unfortunately, I'm not going to take the word of a random guy from 1900s who had a vision about Jesus. That's not historically accurate. It's not historically verifiable. And so I have no reason to believe that. Rather, I would like to turn to some passages that Jesus said about himself that cut against that very much so. And so we have the most famous passage. We have John 14:6, where Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father. No one comes to God except through me. That Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. There is no other way or truth or life, that there is no other path to God except through Jesus. That's what Jesus actually said in the first century as a historical person. Later, the Apostle Paul writes about Jesus, there is one God and there is one mediator between God and man, the man Christ Jesus himself. And another quotation from Jesus, I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he'll be saved and will go in and out and will find pasture. And so again, Jesus, this is in John chapter 10, verse 9, where he says, I am the door, I am the way. And so these are some of the actual things that Jesus had, where he did not, in fact, believe that the way to that Guru Nanak Dev Ji was the ultimate guru, the ultimate truth, the ultimate way to God. In fact, he said very much the opposite. He said, I am the only way. So again, this is a problem, because this whole video is being made saying, hey, Christians, you got to stop trying to get people to follow Jesus. You've got to stop doing that. That's rude. That's disrespectful. That's attacking us. But the problem is that he also says, but we respect Jesus and we honor him as a prophet. Well, if you respect Jesus, and then if Jesus said, I am the only way, then what are we supposed to do as Christians? Are we supposed to deny what Jesus said and say, oh no, he was wrong about that? Or are we supposed to accept that and say, okay, well, if it's true that Jesus is the only way, then it makes logical sense for us to tell other people that, right? What else are we supposed to say? What is he asking from Christians us Christians to do? Is he asking us to deny our Lord? Is he asking us to deny Jesus' words? If so, I don't see how he's any better than the evangelists he's bemoaning. He's basically doing the same thing. So he's wrong. Jesus did not endorse Guru Nanak as the ultimate guru, and in fact, just to the opposite, he said, I am the only way.
The path shown by the great Guru, Guru Nanak Dev Ji. Instead of praying for Sikhs to discover Jesus, you should be praying for your own salvation and connecting with the One.
Okay, instead of praying for Sikhs to become Christians, you should be praying for your own salvation. Well, a couple things. First of all, why has it got to be an either or? I don't see any reason why not. If I believe that Sikhism, that Christianity is the path to God, the ultimate truth to God, then I see no reason why I shouldn't want other people to join in with that. And so that's just a assumption he's making, that we like we can only pray for our own salvation, or we can only pray for other people's salvation. I can pray for both. I can pray that God will bless me and my life, and that I can do my best to follow Jesus myself. And I can also pray that other people will also know Jesus as well.
One more thing. For many years, Muslims and Hindus have said Sikhi is an amalgamation of both religions. And now you guys want to jump on the bandwagon as well. This is a big misconception. And our 10th Guru, Sri Guru Gobind Singh Ji, addresses this in their own words by saying, Sabate apana naam japayo, sat naam kahuna diradayo. Many prophets were sent to this earth, but they lost their way and joined people to themselves rather than joining them to that one. So that one came in the form of Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji. So there are elements of truths in all faiths, but Sikhi has the ultimate truth.
Okay, so he kind of goes off on a bit of a tangent there, but I would like to address that briefly. He says, historically speaking, Hindus and Muslims, when referring to Sikhism, have accused Sikhism as being an amalgamation of Hindu philosophy, Vedic traditions, and Islamic ideas. And he disagrees with that. He says that's not true. Now, I gotta say, from a historical perspective, as an outsider, there seems to be an element of truth to that. I can't necessarily speak to the philosophical ideas, because philosophical concepts are very hard to trace. But just on a historical perspective, the Sikhs were located in Punjab, which was basically on the outer. Well, it was at the time it was conquered by the Mughal Empire, and so they were basically had pressure from the Mughals, who are the ruling Islamic elites. But of course, the majority of the regular people around them were Hindus. And so they were kind of caught between the Hindus and the Muslims. And so their community was basically went through like a trial by fire, that they were defined in many ways by their opposition to Islam and their opposition to Hinduism. For example, in Hinduism, the caste system, one of the things that Sikhism takes great pride in, and for good reason to this day, is that they at least try to do away with the caste system. There's no caste in Sikhism, where that's one of the reasons, for example, that when you get baptized, when you take Amrit, which is like the rite of passage, rite of ceremony into, not into becoming Sikh, but into the Khalsa, which is, different topic for another time, but basically it's one of the rites of passage in Sikhism, that when you do that, you take on the name Singh, or if you're a woman, Kaur. And one of the reasons for that is that the reason that this is done, because in India, when you your family name gives away your caste, that you can just know by someone's last name, by their family name, what caste they're from. And so a lot of discrimination happened in the past, and also currently happens today, based on people's names. But if you have everyone in your community with the same name, Singh or Kaur, then you can't do that anymore. And so that's one way where Sikhism pushes back against Hinduism. Anyway, the point is that they were mashed in between these two competing ideologies, and a lot of the concepts in Sikhism are do seem to be focused on trying to get people to come together. That they're trying to get people to come together, saying, let's stop fighting, let's stop arguing, let's come together and acknowledge Ik Onkar, that it is one, that the universe is one, that non-dualism is the reality, and there's no reason for us to fight between religions. And so, I would say that the idea that Sikhism at least was formed in large part in response to Islam and Hinduism is there's some merit to that. Then he says, well, you Christians are getting on board and saying now that Sikhism has borrowed ideas from Christianity. That's crazy. Stop saying that. Now, this is something I'm just started to look into, so I don't have a lot of knowledge on this, but I will say, so it's pretty well known that Guru Nanak Dev Ji, the founder of Sikhism, was a part of it was part of a Hindu school. He was originally a Hindu. I'm forgetting the name here. Oh, Bhakti. Okay, sorry. He was part of what is known as the Bhakti movement in Hinduism, which Bhakti is a Sanskrit word which means devotion. And the point of the Bhakti movement was to focus on connecting with God personally. And what's interesting is the Bhakti movement is one of, if not the only religious movement in Hinduism that went from South India up to North India. That most Hindu religious movements went from North India and then trickled their way down into South India. What's interesting about that is the Bhakti movement comes in the Middle Ages, but what pre-existed the Bhakti movement was Christianity in South India. By tradition, the Apostle Thomas went to India and evangelized to the people in Kerala and Tamil Nadu, what is now there. And there's still churches there that are allegedly founded by St. Thomas. And Christianity in South India dates back to the 1st century. We know that there were Christians in South India within the 1st century. And so the idea that the Bhakti movement then would have been a kind of a taking from some Christian ideas of knowing God personally and then importing that into Hinduism, and then that eventually made its way up north, and then Guru Nanak started following that. That's the idea behind that. Now, that may or may not be true. I can't verify that, but at the very least, that is a historical claim that needs to be investigated. And I don't think it's fair for him to say, "Oh, you guys are just jumping on the bandwagon here." If that's what happened, that's what happened. There's no reason not to explore, historical theories like this. I don't see what the problem is. I don't see how that's in some way rude or obnoxious. That's just trying to figure out what is true. So anyway, moving on.
So here's the final message from the greatest. So that one, Satanam Kahuna Diradayo. Many prophets were sent to this earth, but they lost their way and joined people to themselves rather than joining them to that one. So
okay, so he says many prophets lost their way, and they joined people to themselves rather than to the one. Well, if he's referring to Jesus, then I don't see how he can make that distinction, because Jesus's point was that he is the one. He is the one true God come into the earth, onto earth in the form of a man. And so by believing in Jesus, we are connecting ourselves to the one true God. And so Jesus is a perfect example, actually, in this case, of he should be happy with what Jesus said. Jesus said, "I am the way, I am the one true God. Therefore, if you follow Jesus, you're following the one true God." So Jesus actually solves this dilemma, the false dilemma he's put here. Jesus actually offers a third option, which is that you can follow a man, Jesus, who's also God, and therefore follow the one true God at the same time as following Jesus.
that one came in the form of Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji. So there are elements of truths in all faiths, but Sikhi has the ultimate truth. So here's the final message.
One more point here. He just said there's elements of truth in all faiths, but Sikhi has the ultimate truth. Okay. Well, once again, for the second time in this video, you've just done evangelism. You just did what you're critiquing the Christians of doing. You just said that Sikhi is the ultimate truth. Okay, great. I have no problem with that. But don't pretend like you're above all the other religions who do evangelism and you're just out there saying that everyone's equal. No, you just said that your religion is the ultimate truth, and other religions are therefore not the ultimate truth. So this is what evangelism is. This is what Christians are trying to do by telling people, hey, we believe that the only way to God is through Jesus, and here's why we believe that. We don't have a malicious intention behind doing that. That's just what we want to do, because that's what we've been ordered to do by Jesus. And let's finish the video.
From the greatest Guru, Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji, to the Low Sun movement and to the free speakers. Sach ho aur sab ko uppar sach achar. Guru Nanak Dev Ji says that the truth is the highest of the high. But what is even higher is following and living that truth every single day. So forget about preaching to other faiths and focus on being good Christians and showing the beauty of your own faith, not through misguided actions. Rather than causing divides between communities, join us and follow the Sikh motto of Deg Deg Fateh, which means feeding the world, fighting injustice, and this is the true victory. We demand a public apology from the organizers for this blatant attempt to disrespect the Sikh faith with a misguided agenda. We are launching an anti-conversion series and workshops where we will teach Sikhs around the country the true essence of Sikhi and combat the aggressive agendas of other faiths. If you want to learn about the true Guru and Sikhi, then we welcome you to come and meet us in person, and we can have an open discussion where we can aim to foster understanding and prevent such issues from occurring in the future again. So we hope that sheds light on this situation and this topic. We have a YouTube channel with over 3,000 videos on it, so check that out.
All right. So that's the video. I want to talk about the last two. Uh, I want to finish this video by talking to the last 2 points he makes. So the first thing he says is, hey, you should stop focusing on preaching to other faiths and focus on being good Christians. Being good Christians. Well, what is a good Christian? Well, the word Christian comes from the Greek word Christos, which means Christ, which means the anointed one, which is who Jesus was. Christos. So a Christian is a little Christ, that means we're supposed to be like little imitations of Christ. We're supposed to follow Jesus. And so that means if Jesus gives us a command, we are to follow it. Now, the final command that Jesus gave his disciples before he ascended up into heaven, in the end of the book of Matthew, he says, now, therefore, go into all the world and preach the gospel, baptizing in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. So Jesus' final command to all his disciples was to go into all the world and to preach the gospel, to do evangelism. Well, he says we just don't focus on preaching to other people, but just be good Christians. Well, I can't do one without doing the other. As a Christian, I was commanded by my Lord to preach the gospel to other people. So just by saying something like that, our friend here from Basics of Sikhi is putting Christians in an impossible position. He's saying you just need to focus on your own faith, but without preaching. What if my own faith requires me to preach? What am I supposed to do then? If you say, well, you just got to not do that, you just got to stick, that's the one part of your faith that you can't engage in. Well, then you are doing the very same thing that you're accusing us of doing, which is you are basically imposing your values onto us and saying, you Christians, I know you think that it's valuable to go around and evangelizing people. We disagree with you. You need to follow our idea, not your idea. Now, I'm happy to dialogue with Sikhs and to say, hey, let's talk about evangelism and how it can be done in good ways. I agree that there are positive and negative ways. There are Christians who do evangelism in really harmful ways, and really in ways that shut off the conversation, in ways that are offensive. And I don't agree with that. I don't think there's any value in doing that. But just the idea at all of sharing your faith, or the idea at all of engaging in evangelism, of that being harmful, just inherently harmful in and of itself, that just doesn't, that is not, that's a non-starter for me as a Christian. As if you're a Sikh asking me to never evangelize, you are asking me to choose between you and my Lord. And how am I supposed to make that choice? You're putting me in an impossible position. Of course, I'm going to choose Jesus, but then you are going to feel that I am attacking you. And so that is just an unfortunate situation that is being brought about by framing the issue in this way. And so to conclude, I think this issue is really important for for one main reason, which is that in a multi-ethnic, multi-faith society, you have to understand that people of other faiths are going to do things that you don't agree with. And I think our friend here understands that. I think he agrees with that idea in theory, that in theory, he knows that Christians will do things that I don't like and Hindus will do things I don't like. But it seems like when it comes to actually seeing it in practice, he suddenly shies away from that he is a pluralist until the rubber meets the road. And now all of a sudden he's saying, whoa, I'm a pluralist, but you don't get to do that thing. That's offensive. I don't like you that. Well, either we're a pluralistic society or we're not a pluralistic society. If we are a pluralistic society, then we have to allow people of other faiths to do things that we find offensive, because guess what? There are practices in every faith that other faiths are going to find offensive. And so just the idea that just because I'm offended by your perspective, that doesn't mean I need to say that you need to stop. So, for example, a Sikh might respond and say, well, that might be true for other religions, but not for us. Us Sikhs, nothing we do can be offensive to other people. Except, I've got to say, as a Christian, I'm not personally offended by this, but the fundamental idea behind Sikhism, or let's just say the fundamental idea that many Sikhs have, which is that all paths lead to God, I strongly disagree with that. And I think that is actually a harmful message. I think it's a harmful message to tell people that all paths lead to God, because I would say that if you say that all paths lead to God, you are going to end up condoning, well, you have two choices then. Either you're going to condone evil as good, or you're going to have to abandon that position. But if you really truly believe that all paths lead to God, then you're going to have to say, for example, that religions that encourage violence are paths that lead to God. That you're going to have to say that religions that, for example, encourage sex slavery is a path that leads to God. That you have to say that religions that encourage people to engage in warfare against innocent people and kill people, that's another path to God. So if all paths lead to God, that means that evil paths also lead to God, and then you're encouraging people to do evil. Now, I know that's not what Sikhs are intending to do. I know that Sikhs are strongly against evil. I know that Sikhs in practice are pushed back, and I really appreciate the work that Sikhs do in the gurdwaras to feed the poor. They do amazing work, and honestly, as a Christian, I can say that I have deep respect for the way that Sikhs engage with the community around them and help people around them, help the homeless, help the people who need food. I really respect that. However, that doesn't mean that I find all their philosophical ideas or all their beliefs to be not problematic. I find that some of them are problematic. Some of their beliefs are problematic. However, I am not going to go around and say, well, hey, you need to conform to my idea of what is offensive or not offensive or harmful or not harmful, just because I think that, the Sikh perspective is ultimately harmful to people. I'm not going to condemn them for that. I'm going to engage them in dialogue. And so in the same way, the basics of Sikhi here, instead of saying, hey, you Christians should stop evangelizing to people, that's harmful, that's not enough. It's like, okay, yeah, you think it's harmful, but that's what living in a pluralistic society means. You just have to come to terms with the fact that other people are not going to do things that you like. But more fundamentally, and this is really where my heart is at, is I really want Sikhs and people of Eastern faiths and secularists, anyone who's not a Christian, when they see Christians evangelizing, to understand the heart behind it, that Christians aren't doing it because they're trying to get power over them or they're trying to get rid of their culture. A big fear, and I know this is true from Sikhs and Hindus and Muslims, especially in Western countries, that they feel like they're being pressed on culturally, that they've got, for example, let's take Sikhs, right? Where I live, there are lots of Sikhs. They speak Punjabi. They have a lot of traditional Indian practices. They sometimes wear traditional Indian clothing. There is a cultural milieu, a cultural dynamic that comes along with Sikhism. And I know that a lot of Sikhs feel afraid that their culture is going to be broken down and discarded by people who leave Sikhism for Christianity. And I understand that fear because you look at some other religions. For example, you look at Islam. When a person in the West even becomes a Muslim, what is one of the first things they usually do? Usually they change their name to a Muslim name. So for example, I know a guy his original name was, I think it was like John, and now his name is Abdul Rahman. Well, that's kind of crazy. It's like a white ginger guy named Abdul Rahman because he changed his name because that was something that he felt compelled to do to conform to the Arab culture, which is attached to Islam. And then, for example, a lot of Muslim converts will start using Arabic words in their English. They'll say things like salah instead of prayer, or they'll say, I'm going to Jumu'ah prayer, which is like Friday prayer. And so they use the Arabic word Jumu'ah instead of Friday. And so I can see how a Sikh would look at, say, Muslim converts and say, oh man, if you convert to another religion, you have to leave your culture behind. You've got to leave all of it behind. And I've got to say, that is not the Christian ethic. That's not the Christian desire or dynamic at all. In fact, one of the ways you can see this is today, when you think of Christian, when most people, especially in Asia and the Middle East, think of Christian, what do they think of? They think of a white European or an American, maybe. Well, guess what? Christianity is not from America or from Europe. It's from the Middle East. And so just that alone, you can see that from the very beginning, Christianity has actually encouraged people to continue on with their culture, has not asked people to abandon their culture or to abandon their language or to abandon their traditional practices. What it's telling people is those practices, your culture needs to be submitted underneath Jesus, that you need to take your culture and you need to submit it under the lordship of Jesus and say, I'm going to do everything that my culture did for that maybe used to be done for these other gods or for these other reasons, but now I'm going to do them for Jesus. And so in that way, Christianity is actually trying to help people maintain their culture. God made us diverse with different cultures and languages on purpose, and he thinks that that's a good thing. He doesn't see that as a bad thing. And so when a Christian is evangelizing to a Sikh, what they're not saying is, hey, I think your Punjabi culture is bad. I think your Indian culture is bad. I think your language is bad. I think your food is gross. You should become an American, or you should become a European. No, that's not what they're saying. They're saying, actually, I believe that your culture is great and it's awesome. Here's how your culture can actually lead you, or here's how you can take your culture and along with your culture can come to know the true living God. And then you can actually, your culture's ultimate fulfillment will also be found in submission to Jesus. And so I know that that's a big fear that a lot of people have, but that's not the intention behind it at all. I know that there have been Christian missionaries in the past who have said crazy and frankly evil things like, if you're a Christian, you need to wear a suit whenever you go to church. That's just not in the Bible. It's not true. The Bible itself was written in various different cultural contexts and adapts to the cultural context. And Christianity from the very beginning has adapted to the cultural context that it's in. And so the point that I want to make here is that when Christians are evangelizing to Sikhs, we're not doing it because we are trying to get rid of Sikh Punjabi culture or Sikh values. We're trying to say, we believe that you guys can know the true living God, along with your cultural practices that are under submission to Jesus. And so this is being done out of love. It's not being done out of malicious hatred or anything like that. It's being done because Christians care. And if Christians didn't care, they wouldn't do that. And one way, this is another topic for another time, we might do another live stream on this, because one of my areas of expertise is Bible translation. And the way that you can see how Christianity differs from other religions, especially from Islam, in how it treats cultures and how it doesn't try to get rid of cultures that it comes into, but instead encourages them, is how Christians are the driving force behind Bible translation. That when the gospel comes into a new culture, that the Christian idea is to translate the Bible into that culture's language so that they can interpret the Bible for themselves. As opposed to when Islam comes into a new culture, the Quran is never translated into that language. Instead, the people of that language are required to learn the language of the Quran, that the people of that language are required to learn Arabic. And so they come to the Quran. The Quran does not come to them. Whereas when the Bible comes into a culture, the Bible comes to them, that God's word is brought into their language. Anyway, that's a different topic, but just that's to show that we Christians are not trying to be colonialist or trying to impose a certain culture. We are trying to help people of all cultures to know Jesus. And we have I want to just conclude by the perspective, I think a really helpful perspective from an atheist, actually. His name is Penn Jillette. He's a famous TV magician, and he's a well-known atheist. And what's interesting is he tells the story about a Christian man who handed him a Bible and started sharing the gospel with him. And he told the story in an interview, and the interviewer said, "Oh man, like, how did you feel? Were you like offended? Were you annoyed?" And Penn Jillette, again, he's a atheist. He's a pure atheist. He has no beliefs in Christianity whatsoever. But this is his response to a Christian evangelizing to him. He said, "If you believe that there's heaven and hell, and you think it's not worth telling someone about it, how much do you have to hate him to not proselytize, to believe that everlasting life is possible and not tell people? This man cared enough about me to proselytize. This man cared enough about me to share the gospel with me." And so I think this is actually a really helpful perspective from an atheist about how we of different faiths need to view other religious people, other religions who evangelize to us or proselytize to us, that we need to actually take it as a compliment and say, wow, thank you for taking the time to share your perspective. And thank you for caring enough about me to bother to do that. I think that's a healthy way forward, that even if I disagree with them, even if I think what they're saying is wrong or even evil, I can at least appreciate their intention behind it. And that is the point I want to leave us with, that ultimately, even if we disagree with other people, that if we can say that we have good motives, that we can see that other people who are sharing their truths with us, sharing their religions with us, even if we disagree with them, we should be grateful. Actually, we shouldn't view that as, oh, that's being rude, that's being they're trying to like infringe on my rights. No, That's not the way we should look at this. That's actually counterproductive. Instead, we should be grateful, and that will produce interfaith dialogue. And also, as a side benefit, it's also going to get us out of this impossible cycle where everyone is constantly critiquing each other for the way they're talking about their faith, right? Oh, well, you came at your faith, so you evangelized so aggressively. Well, you said this and you said this, and then we just get in these arguments of back and forth on who said what and how they said it and why we are offended. Let's get rid of all that. That's not helpful. Let's choose to not be offended. Instead, let's take the higher road and be grateful when people take the time to share their perspective with us. So yeah, thanks for joining me on this live stream here. I hope this has been helpful. We've got a few comments here, which we'll end with. If you've got any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll answer them now. Move up a little bit here. So from Austin Milne, he has said, how would you go about justifying an axiom? Okay, for those who just joined, an axiom is a truth that cannot be proven. It is the foundation of your entire worldview. So an example of an axiom would be, for example, that I exist. I exist is an axiom upon which I base my entire worldview. That can't be proven or disproven. That is just an axiom I have to assume kind of a priori, that before I start any reasoning, I have to have certain axioms that I begin with. And you can't justify an axiom. That's why it's an axiom. All you can do is show whether other axioms are basically are whether you're justified in believing in them. So you can't prove, for example, whether, so another axiom would be that an axiom could be all the people that, or the world around me is an illusion, that actually I'm a brain in a vat and every experience I have is just stimulations of that brain. That's an axiom that can't be proven. There's nothing you can do to prove that's false, right? Any proof you give, I can just subsume that into my worldview. But I can show that it's not justified in me to believe that, because any argument that you give to show that I'm a brain in a vat will be less convincing or less obviously true than my experience of the real world. So therefore, based on my experience of the real world, I can't say that it's false that I'm a brain in a vat, but I can say that I'm not justified in believing that I'm a brain in a vat. So one is an ontological claim about what is really existing, and one is an epistemic claim about what I can know. So anyway, hopefully that's helpful. Happy Feet said, oh, Isaiah 8:118 said, this is really interesting content. Thank you for that. We talked to Happy Feet already. Jesus is the Son of God. Yes. I would love to, Christianity and the Vedic Teachings Within It by Stephen Knapp. Thank you. I will refer to that. I would love to look into that. As to what denomination I follow, I'm an evangelical Christian. And NDC1234 says, you're doing great work. Thank you. Appreciate that. And we've got Tom Gyokai. God bless you. My people were butchered by the Ottoman Turks for over 500 years. Thank you. Jesus, Albanians are leaving. Thank you, Jesus. Albanians are leaving Islam in droves and becoming Catholic again. Well, that's very interesting. I don't know much about Albania, but that definitely sounds like God is doing some good things there. So we'll end the stream there. I hope that this has been helpful. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, subscribe, leave a comment if you've got anything to say. Thanks for joining me. And I pray that God blesses you and your family greatly. Thanks for joining.